Week 10 recaps, starting out with the Bengals and Ravens match on Thursday night, and I was very correct in my prediction of that being another potential Game of the Year candidate. Now, it again, like the very first match, it started out fairly slow. I mean, Chase Brown would manage to get a touchdown on a 12-play, 70-yard drive to open up the game for the Bengals. But after that, not a lot happened. I mean, Nate Wiggins just consistently proves to me through his play that they should have drafted Ladd McConkey with that pick in the 2024 draft instead. I guess he did all right, but there are still plays where I just heavily question their choice. Nelson Aguilar would be looked to early on in the game as well, but of course, his ability sometimes can be up in the air. Now, they did end up scoring a touchdown on this drive to open up the second quarter, 6-yard receiving touchdown for him. There would come a time later on in the second quarter where the Ravens would be in line to potentially challenge a ruling on the field. However, this man John Harbaugh wasted multiple timeouts on that very first Bengals drive, which, again, the very first drive of the game. Now, there was a 3-yard catch by Mike Gesicki that was questionable. Now, they didn't end up being successful with their challenge, and a timeout had to be taken away from them. Then they called it before their third down attempt as well. So it's like, hey, even if you wanted to challenge this play, you had to let it rock. You only got one timeout left. How in the hell are you gonna, you know what I'm saying? That's on you at that point. So you had to move on from there, and their defense definitely took a hit later on. They had to begin to operate on that end without Kyle Hamilton out there. He would suffer an ankle injury after blowing out his leg completely on this play, and he would be out for the rest of the game. Now, again, in terms of potential game-changing plays, Joe Burrow on this very touchdown drive, and it ended up being, which it was capped off by Tanner Hudson for some reason, who again continued to make plays for them every so often. Just getting random reps, rushing the ball to pick up a first down on a fourth down attempt, and then also capping it off with a touchdown. But Joe Burrow would end up throwing a pick. At least that was the initial ruling to Brandon Stevens. However, because he did not maintain full control of the football and get both feet down in bounds, it would be determined that that call would be overturned. So it stood. If it did, it would have been Joe Burrow's first pick of this season in any quarter outside of the fourth. But, again, it was not meant to be. They would get the touchdown a few plays later, and the Ravens would have to just end off the half from there. Now, the third quarter to start out did not go so well for them in the slightest bit. They had another punt, including a very, they have put themselves in a spot where they just started to play some undisciplined football. You get a penalty that's declined. Either way, you didn't pick up enough yardage to get the first from 3rd and 19. So they would punt the ball, and then in one single play, Jamar Chase would get a 67-yard receiving touchdown. Now, to that point, he would pick up 12 career touchdowns of more than 50 yards with that one. It was tied for the second most 50-plus yard touchdown receptions before the age of 25 in NFL history, behind none other than Randy Moss. And it was slated to go a whole lot worse for them from there, because the Ravens, again, continued this stretch of playing sloppy fucking ball. There was a play on third down. They tried to throw a running back screen for some reason, and they lost 6 yards. So they had to punt the ball again. Now, on a drive where the Bengals could have very much taken full momentum in this game, Marlon Humphrey decided to activate his peanut punching powers and get the ball out of Chase Brown's hands as it would be recovered by none other than Roquan Smith. Now, they definitely had to have heard this one fan. I was watching the feed on, my computer, and they have an audio while they're broadcasting of some fan saying, and I believe this is what it was: "You're playing like assholes out there." He was just very discontent about what the Ravens are doing up to that point. And I guess in more ways than one, which I'll get into in a little bit, they certainly decided to turn that around, and even still would remain true, right? Now, Lamar Jackson would certainly begin to work some magic. He had a decent play on the last drive to try to escape, but to no avail. This time, for him, it worked. In a situation where the Ravens were facing their largest deficit at home since their match against the Packers on Week 15 of 2021, he decided to pull off the craziest of moves. Now, the Bengals were certainly getting the pressure on him, and they had him dead to rights in the backfield, but he scampered and scampered, very much running right near the boundaries and shaking off defenders, juking them out of their socks, and he damn near got the touchdown as well. Quite a fucking play, but he would be tackled at the 1-yard line. On that very first down, Derrick Henry would punch it in, obviously. Now, at this very point, I would take some time to go and get some food, getting myself off of that initial feed. But luckily, in the place where I got food from, there was the game on TV, very much so. And I get a few minutes into it, and I see that it's on ABC, and I was like, what? Okay, that's interesting. They have the game on Prime, but they're allowing it to be simulcast on ABC. That's very interesting, and when you think about it, it makes sense, because it's the local team. The Ravens are playing at home, and not everyone here has access to Amazon Prime, believe it or not. So it was pretty interesting to see. I do wonder, though, has that been the case for every single one in, most other cities to this point, host cities of these games? Do they have it simulcast on a local channel of theirs? That would be very interesting to look into, I would say. As I was going through it, the Bengals would be forced into punting the ball. They would pin the Ravens back deep, and they thought they would have them. Instead, Tylen Wallace, who again? Yes, the Biletnikoff award-winning wide receiver of Oklahoma State, just continues to make the most spectacular plays every like 4 games or so. It's crazy stuff when you really think about it. They get into a 3rd and 2 on their own 16, and this man, Tylan Wallace, gets past defenders and even throws multiple stiff arms to extend the play and get an 84-yard touchdown catch. It is Lamar Jackson's longest pass of his career, interestingly enough. And he didn't even really have to throw it all the way downfield. That credit goes to, again, you're giving Tylan Wallace good opportunity to catch and run with the ball by leading him wherever he needed to be led to. So there's credit to Lamar Jackson there, but that play is all Tylan Wallace after that. Justin Tucker would manage to miss an extra point, though, somehow. It's just rough. I really don't know what to say about it. Now, Chase Brown continued to get fed. Like, the whole night, they were trying to get him different, swing passes out of the backfield to kind of serve as rushes. Because, to their credit, the Ravens were doing a pretty decent job of holding their overall rushing attack in check. Like, Chase Brown led the way, but I mean, when you look at 13 rushes and 42 yards, aside from the touchdown, not a lot was done in that department. Even the new addition, Khalil Herbert, had a single rush and didn't gain a yard. He, in fact, fumbled that football, but the Bengals managed to recover that one at that point. So they get in a spot. On that next drive, they turn it over on downs after Joe Burrow tried to get it to Jermaine Burton of all people. That was rendered incomplete. And then the Ravens would respond with another touchdown of their own. Lamar Jackson would get it to Mark Andrews for an 18-yard touchdown catch. And they would successfully convert the 2-pointer. So the Ravens, again, this surge was very much needed because their defense clearly still had not learned how to guard Ja'Marr Chase. He would extend that number of 50-plus yard touchdowns before the age of 25 to 13, getting a 70-yard receiving touchdown this time, and completely getting past the secondary. There was supposed to be safety help back there. They completely bit on the underneath route, and by that point, Ja'Marr Chase was too fast. He exploited the zone perfectly, and Joe Burrow delivered the beautiful pass to get him going. Ravens, though, were not done trying to bail this defense out, trying their hardest to do so. It's like, initially, Lamar Jackson would have been intercepted by Cameron Taylor-Britt, but it hit the ground. Later on in that drive, right after the 2-minute warning, Rashad Bateman would manage to do the deed for them, along with a floater, a little jump pass from Lamar Jackson too, for the easy 5-yard touchdown pass. And Justin Tucker would make the PAT this time. Ja'Marr Chase would get them going again. I mean, seriously, like, it got so bad to that point that on a different Ja'Marr Chase reception on that drive, which would ultimately put the Bengals in very right position to take the game away from the Ravens, there were fans literally screaming in pain in the stands because it was just a horror show out there. They could not stop this man for shit. They really couldn't. And he would later cap off that initial drive with a beautiful touchdown catch in the back of the end zone, past every single defender on that football team. Now, they would try to go for a 2-pointer. They would motion Ja'Marr Chase out to see if he got the matchup that he wanted, and he did. Still, they were seeing something that they didn't like, clearly. So they called their final timeout and tried it again to see if they would get a similar matchup, and they did. However, Joe Burrow was not necessarily looking for Ja'Marr Chase on that play. He was on the other side of him. The play happened so quickly that Joe Burrow's attention was directed more to his right and the right side of the field. He would try to throw it to Tanner Hudson, and the 2-point conversion would fail. However, the referees did appear to miss a blatant pass interference on one of the Ravens members of the secondary, as they just completely jacked up Mike Gesicki back there. They were all clamoring for it, and that's certainly rough. It happens like that, though. You win some of those, you will lose some of those. I guess it's not the only time the Bengals have been in a situation like that. But for this one, I will say that they really have no control over that. You know, some of these people just have their own agendas, I guess. Either way, a great game overall. Great performance for these guys. Joe Burrow's 60.7% completion percentage, 428 yards, and 4 touchdowns propelled him to a stretch where he had 8+, which would be 9 overall, touchdown passes against the Ravens this season alone. Ja'Marr Chase would finish the game with 11 receptions for 264 yards and 3 touchdowns. Any individual that had this man in fantasy football was they were pretty much guaranteed to win. I definitely was exposed to the losing end of that, because depending on which rules that your fantasy football league uses, he put up anywhere in between 55.4 and 65.4 points in fantasy football. Ridiculous effort by one individual, and the Bengals still couldn't get the job done. That should tell you a lot about their defense. See, the Ravens are pretty much in the same spot right now, but they are just finding every way to make something happen. You have to credit Lamar Jackson with that. Joe Burrow is doing his best, though, and his defense is just that atrocious that it doesn't even matter. You can, this is a great offensive performance overall, and you can still lose the game. Their rushing attack, again, 17 overall rushes for 49 yards, was not anything flashy, but if you could kill the Ravens secondary like that, you didn't even need to worry about it in this game. Lamar Jackson, on the other hand, had 75.8% completion percentage, 290 passing yards, and 4 touchdowns of his own. Also, passing for 8+ touchdown passes in a single season series against this team. This would mark the very first time in NFL history that opposing quarterbacks would do this to their respective teams that they were facing in NFL history, given a single season series. Their rushing attack, it was decent. I mean, Derrick Henry had 68 yards and a touchdown run. Lamar Jackson had 33 yards. But because of Justice Hill's ineptitude back there, as he would rush for -2 yards, the Ravens, at least, it has had to have reached, I believe, somewhere over 50 games. I'm going to go out on a limb and say their very long-standing streak of consecutive games with 100+ rushing yards is now done. They only finished with 99. It's going to take a lot of work for them to get it back up to where exactly this stopped. But it was certainly fun while it lasted. I mean, even then, they still got close while averaging 4 yards a carry. Nothing terrible. Colin Wallace would finish with 3 receptions for 115 and the aforementioned touchdown. And Mark Andrews also finished with 68 yards and the aforementioned touchdown of his own. Bateman would finish with 54 and the aforementioned touchdown. Zay Flowers would only have 4 receptions for 34 yards, but again, it's fine. They were trying to get the ball to pretty much everyone on this team. I mean, you had 9 different receivers with at least a reception. That's the quintessential spread offense. So, I guess there's not too much of a complaint there. The Bengals, their situation, they sit at 4-6 after this. And I mean, granted, because of how tough the AFC can be, there honestly is a chance for them to make something happen. But you cannot afford to lose too many more games. Like, I know they play the Steelers at one particular point. In fact, this very next week, they play the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. And then the Steelers at. You've got to try to win both of those games. You can't afford to really lose another one? I don't believe so. Now, we'll move on to some more action. A pretty good game in its own right between the Steelers and the Commanders. Now, I was shocked that they were so hell-bent on getting Jaylen Warren involved in this one. Real deal. They truly did their best to get him going in this game. And this decision to incorporate Jaylen Warren into the offense, like they already should have been doing over the course of the season, led to very good things for them on this very drive, as Russell Wilson would throw a dime to George Pickens for a 16-yard touchdown catch. Their chemistry is very much solidified. Yes, Russell Wilson, if you ask most of his critics, he has his own ways. If you ask critics George Pickens about his own habits, they will definitely not say a whole bunch about, how redeemable, how respectable his ways are sometimes either. But fuck it. They are very much doing everything they can do as a unit together, especially since Russell Wilson has come in. It speaks volumes that George Pickens was so eager to endorse him. Like I said, he announced Russell Wilson being the starter before Mike Tomlin ever even said anything concrete about it. That means something. And it certainly paid off for them on this one. Now the Steelers defense, again, typical Steelers defense early on, they were clamping the shit out of them. And the Steelers would get the ball back, though they would end up getting in a 4th and 15 situation from their own 16-yard line. You would think that they would punt the ball. Instead, they run a fake punt pass with Miles Killebrew, the esteemed special teamer for their unit, as the passer. And one of the corners, or gunners, on the team was actually streaking very open. There was a good chance that it could have worked, all things considered, even if one would bat multiple eyes at the prospect of attempting to even do that in that situation in the first place. But the gunner has no hands at all. He completely dropped it. So yeah, that's why you're playing special teams. You've got to completely reevaluate what you're doing. Austin Eckler would promptly score a touchdown on the ensuing possession, getting a vulture touchdown from a single yard out. And then punts would ensue. Multiple punts. However, Olamide Zaccheaus, who would be listed as the punt returner for this game, was very sloppy on his end to start out. And special teams coordinators all over would blow gaskets at what the hell he was doing out there. From the very first punt of the game, he muffed it and managed to recover it. This time, to open up the second quarter, he was not so lucky. He would muff it, and Ben Skoranek, of all people, would recover it. Pat Freiermuth would subsequently score a 3-yard touchdown catch on a pretty decent short play action pass. If you can run it effectively enough, it will work against most anything. Shockingly enough, the Commanders would drive down the field before getting a field goal of their own. Tell you this name for a second. See if this rings any bells for people. Zane Gonzalez, the Commanders kicker for some reason, in 2024. Zane Gonzalez. Just think about that. I did not know that he was back in the NFL, let alone with this team. As interesting as that may be, I mean, hey, I guess, man. Zane Gonzalez getting that job done. Commanders defense started to clamp down, just completely pursue Russell Wilson and in multiple ways rattle him completely. Now they would be pinned back on this punt on their own 6-yard line. However, Jaden Daniels would need quite the glory drive, if I do say so myself. They would get some action going with some short passes, some Austin Eckler runs to try to trickle the time down, force Pittsburgh to use a couple of their timeouts, and then Jaden Daniels would hit a bomb to Luke McCaffrey. Yeah, Luke McCaffrey. We ain't talking about Christian right now. We'll get that later on. They would end up scoring with an Austin Eckler touchdown run to cap off this 94-yard, 15-play drive, but not before a 1st and 3, where the Commanders and Jaden Daniels attempted to complete a pass to De'Ami Brown, and it was wide open, and he dropped it, making things much more difficult than they needed to be. The way they got in, and they would get the ball back in the third quarter to open it up after taking the 17-14 lead into halftime. Terry McLaurin would open things up with a 54-yard reception. Of course he got them. You got to rely on the Ohio State man when you can, because he's literally him. And it would lead to a Jeremy McNichols touchdown run. Another 1-yarder. Pittsburgh would go and one-up that with a Najee Harris 1-yard touchdown run. Now, they were helped as well, aided by a very strong George Pickens catch and run for 34 yards on that one. Even with Dante Fowler trying to enact as much pressure as possible, even on the play beforehand, he sacked Russell Wilson and made them lose 10 yards to get in the 2nd and 20 situation. But again, that chemistry between those two is, I'm not going to say unmatched, but it's up there. Punts would follow, and the Commanders would put another field goal on the board before Russell Wilson was intercepted by none other than Jeremy Chin. Keep that name in mind for a second. Shout out to him. George Pickens would definitely get himself in some shit, though. He luckily touched him down initially, but afterwards he proceeded to try to box up Mike Sanderstill and slam him to the ground and, like, I ain't gonna say choke him out, but just keep him down there. I don't know what gets into him sometimes. Again, this is the enigma. This is the enigma of George Pickens. But I mean, what are you gonna do, honestly? What are you really gonna do at this point? They decided to get him. I mean, what can I say, bro? I don't know. Dyami Brown would sell Jaden Daniels' shit again. On 3rd and 15 to open up the fourth quarter, they would try to run a flea flicker. I could tell it was a flea flicker. So they give the reverse to Dyami Brown, and they're expecting him to throw it backwards to Jaden Daniels to hit a deeper pass. But instead, he just holds on to the ball for some reason, and they get in a 4th and 26 situation. No choice but to punt it. This ensuing Steelers drive would open up with a George Pickens run on which he has 3 defenders running to his direction, pursuing him at that specific angle. And Benjamin St. Juste gets there. He does his best impression of trying to play basketball, trying to stiff arm this man, and damn near grabbing his face mask. They could have very well called a penalty. He just held that out the whole time to stave him off, while the other 3 defenders are coming his way, and they all subsequently fall down too after forcing him out of bounds. I don't know. I don't know. All of that for 4-yard gain on the rushing aspect. Like, it's wild. It's wild stuff. But George Pickens would continue to make plays on this possession. A 12-yarder on 3rd down. A 24-yard reception on 2nd down on their 47-yard line. And then Jaylen Warren would get fed the rock, as he should. He did his best to try and get the touchdown, and he would be stopped at the 1-yard line on this 5th consecutive rushing attempt of his. He was trying his best to fight, and he held on for too long because one of the members of the Commanders' secondary would force the fumble, and Jeremy Chin, with his ever-present nose for the ball, would manage to fall right on it immediately and get possession back for the Commanders. Now, they were pinned back so deep they would not do anything with it, and the Steelers would be given another chance. Now, dime after dime would be thrown by Russell Wilson, and Sheldon Day was even getting coverage. Yes, Sheldon Day, another very odd name at this time, ending up on the Commanders squad. But they have done so well for themselves to this point that they literally have access to any and everybody that they want to get. Anybody who wants to come there is welcome, really. At least at this point now. It's wild stuff. Anyways, a drive like this, it's only fitting that it'd be capped off with a Russell Wilson deep ball. And he would do just that on 3rd and 9 with a 32-yard touchdown pass to none other than Mike Williams, who is their most recent acquisition. Very fitting. That is how it's done, Aaron Rodgers. That's how you involve Mike Williams in the game. They would take the lead there. And then Alex Highsmith, just before the 2-minute warning, would manage to tweak his ankle, so he would be out for the rest of the game. Of course, they were doing very well for themselves just before the 2-minute warning, but they would get in a very unfavorable spot almost immediately. Only a 1-yard run by Jaden Daniels and back-to-back incompletions before a very controversial 4th and 9. Now, when I was watching the game, it did initially look like Zach Ertz got the first down. But as he was trying to do so, he ended up going behind the initial line of scrimmage. And he himself may have very well believed that he was short. So he was trying his best to get back as DeMonte KZ would initially be there before his momentum was stopped just before the first down marker by none other than Minkah Fitzpatrick, who came in to help out. If he doesn't do that, and that's credit to Minkah Fitzpatrick, because DeMonte KZ is probably not strong enough to stop Zach Ertz's momentum in that case. There's a good chance that that would have been a first. No doubt about it. It's a very respectable play. And even with that Mike Williams play being so very good, that was essentially the most important play of this game. At least before this one, the Steelers, knowing that they could very much get a yard, eventually just run the ball down after the Commanders waste all their timeouts on the first 3 downs and picking up 9 yards. They bluff going forward on 4th and 1, which I initially thought they would do, and it seemed like if they were trying to bluff it, it very much worked in their favor. Instantly, the rookie defensive tackle, Jerzon Newton, folded and became public enemy number 1 in Landover. Okay, there is no shot. Like, instantly, within the first few seconds of the fucking play clock running down, this man jumps off sides and plays right into the Steelers' hands. And after that, all they had to do was take a couple of knees, and the game was done. The show keeps going on, Russell Wilson. Let's fucking ride. Alright? Look, a 50% completion game with only 195 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick doesn't seem all that flashy. But when the plays needed to be made, especially with that Mike Williams touchdown catch, he got it done. Alright? That is really all you can ask for at the end of the day. You needed to stretch the ball down the field in that moment, and it worked to perfection. Their rushing attack was decent. I mean, 3.3 yards per carry that's an interesting, way of looking at it. They did pick up 140 yards, though, and they ran the ball 43 times. That would exhaust a defense. That would certainly make them commit more often than not to trying to stop the run. And granted, they weren't all that effective, so it kind of worked. George Pickens would have 5 receptions for 91 yards and a touchdown. And again, Mike Williams with the 32 receiving yards to be the second most prolific receiver in this game for the Steelers. Meanwhile, again, Jeremy Chin's shout out to him with an interception and a recovered fumble. Jaden Daniels would not have the strongest of games either, not necessarily turning the ball over. There's not too much you can ask for here. It was, even if they combined for 55 total points, for all intents and purposes, a defensive slugfest. 50% completion for him as well, and only 202 passing yards. We've seen him, deal with, I'm not going to say stronger defenses, but he certainly had better performances, right? Steelers are a hell of a unit, though, and they gave him a lot of work. He had to earn every single completion. The Steelers did a better job of stopping their rushing attack. Yes, 3 rushing touchdowns, but only 22 carries for 60 yards? Nah. A 1-point game like this you would have fared a lot better from having a little more production on that end. Terry McLaurin will lead all receivers in this game with 5 receptions for 113 yards. And Noah Brown would have 33, Zach Ertz would have 31, and Luke McCaffrey with the aforementioned 23 yards. De'Ami Brown, again, hindered this by having 2 catches for negative 13 yards. Absolutely ridiculous work by him. Alright, we are moving on to the Bucks and 49ers match. Now, this one, again, the focus was more so on Christian McCaffrey's return, as it should have been. I mean, still started out relatively slow. They would trade punts before the 49ers were able to establish their dominance. Okay. I mean, first of all, you start with on defense, them trying to run one of these patented running back screens against Fred Warner, and that shit didn't work against them. Alright, he stopped that completely. They get the ball back, and they get Christian McCaffrey involved, including him getting a 7-yard catch where he just completely exposes his defender, leaves him in the dust. And that's how you know that he's back. Still, Jordan Mason would take the next rush to get them into a 2nd and 5 on Tampa Bay's 46 before Ricky Pearsall works his way all the way to the end zone on a 46-yard catch and run for a touchdown, his first of his NFL career. And while Jake Moody would make his extra point here, let's just say that, foreshadowing. It don't get much better from there. Okay, it's very, very, very rocky waters for Jake Moody from this point. That's all I can say. Okay, look, great work by Pearsall. I didn't think he had that kind of speed in him in the first place. So that's interesting. The Bucks would suffer yet another very key loss. We lose Tristan Wirfs over the course of this early portion of the game. Definitely did not help them out. Still, you had a very glorified field goal session here. Okay, they traded field goals, and then the ineptitude, the idiot kicker mentality started kicking in. This man, Jake Moody, missed a 49-yard field goal, even with Jawan Jennings getting a 30-yard catch, doing his best DeAndre Hopkins in 2018 against the Dallas Cowboys mentality. It still didn't work for them. Still. Because Jake Moody is just that inconsistent. I don't know, man. They would take it to the end of the half. It would still be a 10-3 ball game. And while the defense would be doing their very good work, shout out to motherfucking Devondre Campbell, by the way, right? Jacob Cowing, the punt returner, rookie out of Arizona for the 49ers, would fumble a punt of his own. And the Bucks, despite Devondre Campbell's good work, would still manage to score a touchdown here. And granted, when you're inside or near the red zone like this already, it becomes very easy for you. Your entire game plan and approach to moving the ball down the field shifts because you don't have that much space to work with, which can be a good and a bad thing. Rachaad White would get this one to make it a 10-10 ball game, and then Jake Moody would make one. Still doesn't get too much better for them from here. Now, they would go on a 10-play, 70-yard drive, the Bucs, to open up the fourth quarter by taking a 17-13 lead with a Bucky Irving 12-yard touchdown run. He was truly trying to get himself activated in the motherfucking game. And he certainly made his impact felt at this point. George Kittle would later one-up him, but not before another Jake Moody missed field goal. This time from 50 yards. George Kittle would cap off a 6-play, 64-yard drive for the 49ers after they forced the Bucs into a punt of their own. That was aided by a Christian McCaffrey catch for 30 yards. Hell of a dime from Brock Purdy on that one, too. It sailed completely over the linebacker's head, and he reeled that shit in. George Kittle would also get his own brand of a toe tap on that very touchdown to make it a 20-17 ball game. As the defense continued to force the Bucs into punts, they would do their best to try and extend the lead. Now, Brock Purdy, again, even with making some good plays, he still got in his own way in a little bit with some errant passes and some untimely decisions, though he wasn't turning the ball over in these moments. So he was all right, I suppose. But Jake Moody continued to sell everybody's shit. He missed another field goal, this time from 44 yards, and I guess in one way or another, he had to pay because one of their players, Deebo Samuel Sr., he was sick of it. He was tired of it. He wasn't going to stand for this shit anymore. So he went to the long snapper for the team, Tabor Pepper, and smacked the shit out of him. He smacked the fuck out of him. Jake Moody just happened to be there right by his side. He got a brunt of that shit too. Oh, man. Anytime you have something like that going down, that is not the best of looks. Now, I'm not going to over-exaggerate and say, oh, the 49ers are in danger. I mean, granted, they already were, right? They already have been. This is not going to necessarily exacerbate that point. But it's just rough. Still, they would overcome despite Baker Mayfield's best efforts to turn into... I don't know who he was trying to be like, to be honest. I really have to ask myself that question. Because earlier in the fourth quarter, this man was spinning out of sacks like he's motherfucking... literally just pulling off the most escape artist type plays. Spinning out of that pocket like Lamar Jackson and trying to throw a dot to Ryan Miller, but that would eventually be an incomplete pass. And then, later on this very drive, you would have Baker Mayfield on 4th down and 7, being pursued by Nick Bosa, and he just sticks his left arm all the way out, extends it completely, and Nick Bosa can't even make the tackle. He cannot make the game-winning sack in that situation. He's literally holding him off like a child. And he throws it a little bit across his body to the boundary. And Rachaad White gets it for an 8-yard gain to pick up the first down and extend the drive. I really question it. Then Baker Mayfield would pull off more trickery and get a 3-yard run, extending more plays and getting some very good passes in to help them drive all the way down to the San Francisco 32-yard line before a couple of penalties and a couple of Rachaad White runs got them in position to kick a field goal, and Chase McLaughlin would make it to tie up the ball game. Now, Brock Purdy would certainly lead a clutch drive of his own. Pearsall would get involved, and Jennings would get involved. That's all they needed in this one. And luckily for them, with 3 seconds left to go, Jake Moody would get the snap, kick the ball, and make the field goal to put them up 23-20 and give them the victory. Now, I've just got to address this before I address anything else. Okay, Jake Moody was 3 of 6 on field goal attempts in this game. They could have very much won this game by 12. Like, I'm not saying make all of them, but like, goddamn, some of these were legitimately important for him to make, and you just completely blow the opportunity to do so. It's wild stuff when you really think about it. Again, Pearsall had very good overall contributions. 4 receptions, 73 yards. His first NFL touchdown. Very good work. McCaffrey did not have the strongest of rushing games, but there's something to be said about an individual that can come back from the injury he's come back from, miss all the time he has this very season, and manage to rack up 19 total touches, okay, for 107 total yards. Easy game with 100 yards from scrimmage after missing all that time. That's ridiculous. The 49ers could very much turn things around just by simply having this individual back there, which makes sense, right? He's that great of a talent. So that's not like a stretch to say. It's just know what is coming next week, and that business certainly going to get handled. All right? Deebo Samuel would have 8 total touches for 76 total yards. George Kittle would have 3 receptions for 57 yards and the aforementioned touchdown. Jaywan Jennings would lead the way with 7 receptions for 93 yards, though. Meanwhile, on the Bucs side, only 116 yards and a touchdown for Baker Mayfield. Still 62% completion from the field. Didn't really turn the ball over too much. It's really more so on the game plan that they are running down there in Tampa. Again, they are so predicated on the very short throws, the running back screens, the tight end screens, and I mean, I guess at times it does work, especially when your run game is going for 110 as well, and having Bucky Irving leading the way with 73 yards and a touchdown run, I might add, with Rachaad White only having fucking 31. But when you look at that, I mean, it just does look bad when you mean to tell me that 353 passing yards by one quarterback compared to 116 by the other. Who's normally going to win that game? Probably the quarterback with more passing yards. So you've got to be some kind of very dominant team in that aspect. You have to have such a great balance in that regard that you can overpower an air raid attack like that. And granted, because of Jake Moody's ineptitude, they very well could have, but not this time. Alright? Moving on to, what comes next. But hey, CBS decided to broadcast this game nationally. So blame them. The alternative wasn't as good either. Again, blame them. Alright? Eagles Cowboys. You know what time it is. I can just run through this, or try to, but can I really? We'll see. All right. Look, they open up the game with a punt and a fumble by Cooper Rush on back-to-back possessions, and that leads to an easy-ass touchdown. Easy-ass touchdown run by none other than Jalen Hurts, vulturing another one in from a very single yard with the patented tush push. But again, you can't stop it. Y'all want to ban the play so bad, just, bro, get better personnel in to account for those linemen. But guess what? You can't. You're not working as hard as those people are, clearly. It's clearly something that you need to improve. Alright? The Cowboys would get a field goal of their own to cap it off. And, Brandon Aubrey is just, Brandon Aubrey, Cavante Turpin, man, they're trying, but those guys just suck. Alright? Look, you have Trayvon Diggs pulling off a move he's never pulled off before. Elite coverage and an interception by him as the Eagles were actively trying to drive. And they were in Dallas's red zone on the 12-yard line. That's a great defensive play. But Mike McCarthy will eventually find a way to fuck the shit up. They don't do anything with that next possession. They punt almost immediately. Then the Eagles punt. And then another fumble. Another one. This time by Ezekiel Elliott. Zach Bond gets in there and does the deed before it is recovered by none other than Cooper DeJean. Reed Blankenship also got involved in that mix just a little bit. So shout out to those guys. It's a very good one. Now this is after Saquon Barkley would decide to get his own measure of terror on none other than DeMarvion Overshown and stiff-armed the shit out of him. And then he subsequently got a pretty good play on him afterwards. What are you going to do, right? It's a part of the game. Jalen Hurts would fumble here, and it was recovered by Maris Lufau, but still, on their 6-yard line, once again, for the second straight possession, alright, they get an opportunity on 1st and goal from the 6-yard line, and they couldn't do anything with it. They have to settle for a field goal. Do you know how ridiculous that is? Now, where Jahan Dodson, the former Commanders wide receiver, will be putting in some good work for the Eagles receiving core early, this part of the show would become A.J. Brown's time to shine. Jalen Hurts would also sprinkle in a pretty good 24-yard rushing attack over the course of this one as well, before Dallas Goedert got in the end zone with a 14-yard touchdown catch as well. They managed to get the ball back to Cowboys, and yet they somehow punted the ball in 22 seconds. Just pass after pass after pass that all went incomplete, and they give it up, still allowing the Eagles to have just a chance to do something, but they, again, concede. That would not be the theme of this game. They would both open up the half with respective punts before the Eagles decided to just completely screw them over, right? Johnny Wilson, the rookie wide receiver from Florida State, would actually end up capping off the drive with a 5-yard touchdown catch. And it's like the way he boxed out Jordan Lewis, I'm like, you better catch that. This man is a 6'7" wide receiver. There's no reason why he doesn't get that in that situation, but I believe that is his first NFL touchdown. So you've got to give him credit where credit is due. Cooper Rush is... Yeah. Cooper Rush was completely on clamps if you couldn't already tell. And when you hear the numbers, or if you just watch the game as well, like I have done both at this point, you already recognize how bad this shit got for the Cowboys. But again, still, they had to just rub it in a little bit. Kalen Carson would get fucking burned by A.J. Brown for 44 yards. It would become a Saquon Barkley fest of 4 consecutive runs before they involved Kenneth Gainwell and then capped it off with yet another Jalen Hurts touchdown run. They would actually lose DeMarvion Overshown over the course of this very drive to injury. Then the fucking Cowboys decided to tease. They decided to tease every single one of their fans. Alright? They would put in Trey Lance, who everybody had been clamoring for at this point, because you're like, okay, you have seen Cooper Rush at this point, and you don't really expect too much from him. You at least are expecting Trey Lance to, like, take some, higher responsibility and become somewhat improved in this system as a very qualified backup, or a very solidified backup, right? They put him in, and they give him an opportunity to run the ball. They run the ball with Rico Dowdle, and then he is subsequently taken out for the rest of that drive. They finish it off with Cooper Rush, and he ironically fumbles the ball again. This time it's forced by Bryce Huff and recovered by Zach Bond. Then field goals ensued. Trey Lance would get the go for the rest of the game, but Jake Ferguson would get put in a box too. He would fumble. This time forced by Zach Bond and recovered by Reed Blankenship. More field goals on the way. Trey Lance interception after that to C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He would certainly be on cloud 9 with that one. Punt, end of ball game. Eagles win 34-6. Just a very, very blatant slap in the face as well. They would be in a spot to go for it on their last drive on 4th and 1, and they would try the tush push with none other than Kenny fucking Pickett, and he converted it. Aha! But banned the play. But because no other quarterback is capable of making that happen, right? Get a better offensive line. Get a stronger offensive line. Get them niggas in the weight room. How about that? Stop complaining about you not being able to stop the play. That is all I'm saying. Get your linebackers stronger. Get your front 7 deep in those trenches, man. It's that simple. Certainly, it's been a great week so far. It's been a great string of weeks so far with this development continuing. I guess not for all those people in their franchise. But hey, the Cowboys have been atrociously bad if you haven't already recognized. But their negative 94 point differential at home through their first 4 home games in this season is their worst all-time stretch in their history. Alright? Ridiculous work. Still, they don't seem to care about that because apparently, according to a headline that I saw very later on that day on Fox Sports, these niggas were fucking bitching about fucking curtains in the stadium? CeeDee Lamb was saying that he wasn't necessarily able to locate the ball on a possession that could have ended in a touchdown. The ball was being thrown his way, and it was a little bit behind him anyways. So it wouldn't have been completed. But he couldn't locate it because the sun was glaring in his eyes, which, yes, that has been a problem with AT&T Stadium. I can confirm there have been several instances of that happening to players over the years. That's not surprising. And then Jerry Jones wants to be all in a fuss over it and confused as to why that's being inquired about. But all I'm saying is, why is that even a headline in the first place? Don't you have more to worry about? Don't you want to try to turn the season around? Even if the general NFL fan and NFL pundit thinks that your season is probably fucking done. You in that locker room, in that organization, should still have a little faith and some more focus in trying to actually make something happen this season, right? Like, what? That whole culture is just shot. Then you even have Micah Parsons commenting on different ordeals as it pertains to Mike McCarthy and so on and so forth. There's just too much going on right now. I guess even if you were in a spot to contend or make the playoffs this season, it would just end the same way. Because there's just not enough. There's not enough cohesion in there. Simply put. They just cannot string anything together. They can't do it. It is damn near impossible for them. Simple as that. Speaking of the impossible, y'all want to hear about this Texans-Lions game? I don't even need to necessarily get this deep into it. I'll try my best, but all I've got to ask you is this. Suppose that a quarterback throws for 5 or more interceptions in this climate. Are you expecting them to win that ball game? Just keep that in mind. He would enter this game, Jared Goff, with the most prolific 6-game stretch in NFL history. An 83% completion percentage, a 140.1 QBR. We know that he's been playing pretty well this season. He has worked himself into some pretty decent MVP talks, if I do say so myself. And the game started out they would get a very good third down pickup, a shovel pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown before the ball would be tipped up by Jalen Petre, the dog of all secondary players. Right? Y'all can't keep forgetting about that when it comes to Jalen Petre. And Jimmy Ward would subsequently get his first interception of the season. CJ Stroud would try to consistently go to Tank Dell before getting the ball into the end zone with Joe Mixon on an 8-yard touchdown run to open up the game 7-0 after that possession. Punt would ensue shortly thereafter. And then the Texans, despite a 36-yard catch and run by Joe Mixon, would not be able to get in the end zone. They would settle for another field goal. And this would be a theme for them. Now, the Texans' defense, despite allowing Jared Goff to get a 20-yard touchdown pass to Sam Laporta for 20 yards, could be argued that they did a very great job of, holding him in check in the passing game, making Jared Goff uncomfortable. Because when you force him into pressure, which is what I have been consistently saying, when you force him into high pressure situations, get a little bit of it on him, he's going to crumble. And he more than did that in this one. Another interception was thrown with a tipped pass by Denico Autry. And the subsequent play was made by none other than Henry To'oTo'o, linebacker from Alabama. Both defenses, despite that kind of contribution, held each other's run game in check. I mean, not a single player from this team was actually able to have a pretty good game in terms of running the football straight up. That's credit to both of them. Now, the Texans would actually lose Laramie Tunsil for just a little bit as he was sidelined. Now, interestingly enough, you would get a situation where the Texans were in position once more to convert on this opportunity. But again, they consistently allowed them to linger around by settling for field goals time and again. Alright? At a certain point, too, pretty funny stuff here, I believe there's a player on Detroit with the last name Houston, and he would end up sacking CJ Stroud. I find that pretty ironic, if I do say so myself. I'm not very too familiar with this player. Yes, that would take place on that very field goal drive at the end of the first quarter. Just try and figure out who this player is because I'm not too familiar with that. But, this is pretty funny. Yeah, James Houston IV. Just do with that what you will, to be honest. Okay, I really don't know, right? Yeah. The Lions, even with all this, they have had one of the best marks in the second quarter. It didn't stand. It simply did not. 14.9 points per game in the second quarter would be on pace to be the highest mark ever for a team that didn't remotely stand. They would be down 23-17 by the end of it after John Mechie continued to compound on a pretty strong performance of his, getting a touchdown catch and subsequently being followed up by another Jared Goff interception by Kamari Lassiter. Okay, just bear with me for a second though. It gets worse. 3 straight drives with interceptions by both teams. The Lions have been so prolific on this in themselves. They are the only team this season, the only unit, to log at least one interception in every single game, and Carlton Davis would get CJ Stroud on the very first play from scrimmage in the second half. What do you think happened after that? Another Kamari Lassiter interception. This game was sloppy in many ways. And then a punt would follow. Now, CJ Stroud was certainly struggling. And again, Jared Goff was too, right? He would still get a touchdown pass to Sam Laporta. At least set up a touchdown run to David Montgomery with a 37-yard Sam Laporta pass catch the play before that. They would still not pick up the 2-point conversion. And then another interception was thrown to Carlton Davis by CJ Stroud before another interception, this time to Kalen Bullock, was thrown by Jared Goff. And then punts followed. More punting. Now, there were a lot of very weird milestones, very interesting milestones at play here. Okay, when you look at this, for one, the Lions entered this game with a 27-8 record since Week 9 of 2022. Only Kansas City had a stronger regular season stretch before that point. stronger record within that time. Also, it is so rare that a team would be able to win a game. You have to go all the way back to 1970. The Colts, Baltimore Colts at the time, last team to win a game, this one against Chicago, despite having 5 or more interceptions by a single player and a 15-point deficit. Keep in mind they were down by 16. So you enter this fourth quarter, and the Lions do start out strong. Amon-Ra St. Brown gets in the end zone for a 9-yard touchdown catch off of a screen. But not before Jameson Williams made some pretty fucking tough plays. I mean, on this 2nd and 6, he caught it for 17 yards to pick it up. But if you look at it, as he's getting tackled, they both converge on him, toe-to-toe, and this Murray person. Bro, he buckles in such the weirdest way back there. I thought he was going to be out of the game. And granted, he did sit for a little while. Like, no person is supposed to crumble like that. That was just horrible to look at, but he held in there. He held on the whole time. You have to give him his respect there. All right. Now, hey, I mean, the Texans would subsequently follow that up with a punt of their own. Even with CJ Stroud, doing some good work in terms of throwing some pretty good passes, the Lions started to get that pressure going. He would subsequently get in the spot on 4th and 23 where they had no other choice but to just punt the ball, man. They had no other choice. Jared Goff will keep this stretch going on and on and on with some Jahmyr Gibbs runs in there as well before a very clutch field goal by Jake Bates. Jake Bates is a very interesting story as well. You have to respect what he's done. He's asserted himself as a pretty reliable kicker in this league. He was doing it in the XFL, and again, the attention he got after his performance was warranted. It is more than paid off for the Lions so far, because they had a few seasons where they were just struggling to find a reliable kicker. I mean, you were rotating in between guys like Zane Gonzalez, like Matthew Amendola, like Michael Badgley. Matt Prater eventually left your teams. You just had a revolving door at that position. They may have something in Jake Bates. So that's very good. And the Lions, again, credit to them, they still got the best of the Texans here. Now, it's tough that Kaimi Fairbairn would miss this 58-yard field goal of his own to try and tie it up. But even with guys like Carlton Davis III going down with injury, even with them losing to Lee McNeil, and even with both of these teams combining for 7 picks in a game, which would be the most since 2018, the fucking Lions would still find a way. This final drive, which was a relatively short one, they didn't have too much to do, but it played right into their hands, and surely enough, it took a very narrow make for Jake Bates to get it in the first time on the other side of the goalpost, and sure enough, on the left side of the goalpost, he would just barely sneak it in, but it would be good from 52 yards, and they would close out the game, winning it 26-23. Hell of a performance. So the Lions set that milestone, and also Jared Goff became the most recent quarterback to win a game despite throwing 5 interceptions since Matthew Stafford. That tells you everything you need to know about this game. It was just chaotic, but it was very good for primetime football. You don't see that every day now. And certainly you'll have people on both sides talking about this one for quite a while. In all the revisionist history pieces, in all the trivia questions, and so on and so forth, man, you gotta respect it. Now, I want to preface this next game with something. We're going to move on with the Dolphins versus the Rams match, but I should account for the fact that news did break that sometime before this very game, the accomplished Rams head coach in John Robinson, who again is now currently the second winningest coach in Rams history, he did pass away at the age of 89 due to illness. It was very interesting to hear about that. I had not prior to that point. And then you have the team, Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, breaking that news. So it was, certainly rough. You knew that the Rams would at least, in some capacity, try to do their best to honor him throughout this one. And there will probably be something more formal coming for them next week. However, they still had to go out there and play the game to some extent. And certainly they tried, but it just didn't happen. I mean, their offense throughout the entire thing was atrocious. They had 15 points. All of them were field goals. And despite the defense doing pretty solid work, I might add. I mean, they have entered this one with 5 different players with at least 3 or more sacks this season. But their offense could not compound on any of these opportunities. I mean, you have Matthew Stafford on this drive getting intercepted by Anthony Walker Jr. of all people. After, getting consistently pressured by guys like Calais Campbell, by guys like Deshaun Hand, by guys like Chop Robinson, who, I guess he was getting more involved in this game because I haven't been too keyed in on all of the Dolphins matches this season. So it was great to see him. He got a few good plays in, some decent tackles for loss, I believe a sack, and also getting out in coverage too. I might not have expected that all too well. Still, again, you get a shot even being down 10-0 with them trying to get you good looks, as Christian Roseboom would intercept Tua. But here we go again with yet another situation. 2 consecutive games that I watched and 2 consecutive games that I am now talking about where there were 3 back-to-back possessions with turnovers, because that interception was followed by a Kyren Williams fumble forced by none other than Deshaun Hand. And then that possession was followed by a Tagovailoa fumble forced and recovered by rookie Jarrett Verse out of Florida State. The Rams would finally break through with a field goal to get the game to a 10-3 score. Now, Dolphins would punt because their offense is nearly on that same plane at this point. They've got a lot to figure out. All right. They would get a field goal going, and then we thought it was Josh Carty time, but he would miss the field goal to open up the third quarter. And the Dolphins would follow that up with a 1-yard touchdown catch by Tyreek Hill after getting Johnny Smith involved on some pretty good plays. Now, they would open up the fourth quarter with a field goal. In fact, this entire fourth quarter was traded a field goal bonanza. They were quite literally trading field goals on 5 consecutive possessions to open up the fourth quarter. From the very first play of the fourth quarter was a field goal. Just think about that. Every other play was irrelevant because it was all in furtherance of the field goal attack. Even with them trying to make some good plays there with Matthew Stafford, nothing helped. Surely enough, the Dolphins would do enough on their side of the defense to get enough pressure on them, get the ball back, and continue to run down time with the likes of Raheem Mostert and even Odell Beckham Jr. contributing a couple catches before opening the game up 23-12. Now, this incoming decision by Sean McVay, in which he chose to kick the field goal on third down with around 40 seconds left, was a very controversial one, and I honestly did understand it in the moment because I'm seeing it as you had not scored a touchdown all game long. All game long. You want to have faith in your offense, and you've got a decent amount at your disposal in terms of time and even a timeout to fall back on. But why risk that knowing that you just have not gotten the job done today? And the Dolphins have been on you. No matter what you call, they're going to find a way to stop you. Still, other people did not see it like this. And granted, DeMeco Ryans caught a lot of flack for doing something similar last week on Thursday Night Football against the Texans. But I mean, well, against the Jets. But I mean, you look at it. Like, yeah, 42 seconds timeout at your disposal. There's a decent amount to work with there. I do understand that. And you're on their 12-yard line. At most, just take a shot. You could very much have done that. I will agree. But I personally had no problem with this particular one. Because nothing was going right for them tonight. And the Dolphins would just simply take it to the end of the game to close it out 23-15. Now, I am going to move on to some other games here. I'm going to start out with the way it has it formatted on Fox Sports. We're going to talk about the Chiefs-Broncos. All you need to know about this one is that it was a very weird one. I mean, the Broncos actually had a 14-3 lead in this one in the second quarter before a Travis Kelce touchdown cut it down to 14-10. Will Lutz missed the field goal to bring it to the half, and then the Chiefs would follow up with field goals to close it out. But again, you just simply look at the box score. That's not how this thing went, okay? It took them work to get their field goals in. There were punts on punts on punts before the Chiefs finally took it over on their final drive in the fourth quarter. Now, the Broncos would still have a chance to make something happen, and granted, they were in prime position to do it. A 13-play, 42-yard drive that took up almost all the time, pretty much all the time up to that point. A 5-minute and 57-second possession. They had it in the bag. And, let's fold it. Lyle Chenal was one, I guess they have him highlighted as the primary blocker of this kick. But yeah, it was blocked. The Chiefs win and remain undefeated. Quite the victory. I mean, you have Bo Nix actually deciding to activate some passing prowess. I mean, 73.3% completion, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns. He still did some bonehead shit, but I guess this was far and away his best pure passing game of the season. And with the way the Broncos defense was playing, it still wasn't enough. Because you could have done way more on your end to convert on these opportunities. You're facing off against the 2-time reigning champs. You gotta do more than that. You have to do more than that. And that's just a credit to their defense as well. I mean, 23 rushes for 78 yards, holding their rushing game in check. Devon Vele, the rookie wide receiver from Utah, would actually catch his very first NFL touchdown and pick up 39 receiving yards. Cortland Sutton would get 6 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown as well. On the Chiefs side, not a lot of ground in the rushing attack either. I mean, 57 rushing yards on 3 carries, certainly nowhere near enough. But Kareem Hunt will lead the way in reception yards. 65 yards for him. Kelsey would have 8 for 64 receiving yards and a touchdown. DeAndre Hopkins would also pick up 4 receptions for 56 receiving yards. Just a very odd one, but you have to credit the Chiefs. They are finding a diverse array of ways to win ball games, and they still have not a loss on their record yet. Like, there's something to be said about that. Something. Yes, a whole lot of people were certainly pissed off about it, but I mean, what are you gonna do, man? This game right here is infuriating. So, I'm not even going to try to make people that mad, bro. All I got to say is that a game happened in Germany between the Giants and Panthers, alright? It went to overtime somehow, some fucking way, just to torture all of the German and Dutch fans in fucking Munich, alright? They are literally so pissed off with the product that they watched, and I fucking know it. Yes, you're trying to grow the game internationally, I understand it, but there's no way you relegated them to seeing this fucking bullshit ass game between them. You got Daniel Jones doing the dumbest shit, being a player that throws 2 fucking picks in the game, didn't throw a single touchdown pass. One that Xavier Woods, who I don't even know how he's still in the fucking league. Alright? You got fucking situations as well with him throwing another one to Josie Jewell after they recover a fumble from fucking Chuba Hubbard, with Davidson picking it up and spotting them a chance to make something happen near Panthers red zone. And then you have the nerve, you have some fucking nerve to put them in position, man, to send this game to overtime? What do you mean? They would cap it off by having Graham Gano, who is finally recovered from his injury, kick the game-tying field goal near the end of regulation. And then the very first play of overtime is followed up. It results in a fucking Tyrone Tracy Jr. fumble that gives the Panthers favorable field position and they kicked the game-winning field goal in overtime. Like, so fucking trash, bro. 22 of 37 for Daniel Jones. 190 yards. Okay. Tyrone Tracy Jr., I mean, credit to him. Like, yes, he's going to feel the pressure there because he's one of the only people who happens to be a fucking rookie, by the way, that is trying to help the Giants actively win ball games, and they don't want to do it. Because Daniel Jones is just he's an obstacle in their path to success. He is holding them back. There are a lot more things that do need to be improved for them, I will say. Alright? That's certainly true. They do not have the strongest of rosters out there. But they do fine. So they can at least be a capable ball club, right? No, not with him at quarterback. Absolutely not. It's atrocious. I mean, even with Graham Gano missing one again. Like, he's still recently coming back from injury, and he kicked the game-tying one to somehow give them a fighting chance still. Then you have this sick joke of a franchise over here in the Panthers managing to win a ball game where Bryce Young only completes 60% of his passes on 25 attempts and only throws for 126 yards. Chuba Hubbard, though, had a career day with 153 rushing yards on 28 carries and a touchdown run. Like, it's just so bad. Like, why? How dare you relegate these people to this shit, man? What kind of jokes are you fucking trying to tell us, man? No. Even more of a joke. And there are a decent amount of them coming, but let's just hold on. Alright, we got the Patriots and Bears up. The Bears have not scored an offensive touchdown. Granted, any touchdown in the past 2 full games. The past 2 weeks. That's all you need to know for this one. And the Patriots won it 19-3. Their offense wasn't as explosive either, and Drake May did have a bit of a hiccup to start it out, getting intercepted by none other than TJ Edwards for some reason. But still, they were able to establish a little something as he got a touchdown pass to Jalen Polk, albeit a short 2-yard one. And then they could just kick field goal after field goal from there because they could really afford to. And even with those opportunities, the Bears could not respond at all because of how atrocious their offense has consistently been. I mean, nothing went well for them in the run game. 73 yards, only 3.6 yards a carry. Caleb Williams only had 53.3% completion from the field and only threw for 120 yards. DJ Moore only had 24 receiving yards. Keenan Allen only had 44. Rama Dunze only had 23. And again, the Bears' defense is legit. They are legit. But they are not getting the help. When you are consistently putting teams in position to settle for 3 points or no points at all, you want to have some response that can counter or help you eviscerate that team completely by dominating them on the offensive end in any space. Like, I assume that the team is trying to go for balance with a quarterback like Caleb Williams. Is not to say that he doesn't have potential to take over games with his arm just yet, but you want to set that up first. So, you want to establish both a solid rushing attack and a very capable passing game. That hasn't happened for them a single time this season. It hasn't been working. And with the development that I'm going to detail later, you can see that somebody is clearly sick and tired of it. But as for the Patriots, I mean, they fared a little better at least again, by creating that distance. 144 yards on the ground and 35 carries for 4.1 yards a carry. That's definitely going to tire them out. Drake May had 184 yards passing as well. Austin Hooper led all receivers in this one with 3 receptions for 64 yards. And Douglas would also pick up 50 receiving yards on 4 receptions. Kayshon Boutte had 4 receptions for 47 yards, and then no one else proceeded to have over 15. But a win is a win, right? Vikings, Jaguars, an even bigger clown show. Oh, man. It just, like, what the fuck? What the fuck? If the Lions and Texas game ended up having the most combined interceptions for a quarterback matchup since 2018, then all you need to know about this game right here is that at least one interception was thrown in every single quarter of the fucking ball game. And there was a fumble. There was a fumble as well by Mac Jones. Harrison Phillips was the one to force it and then subsequently recover it. Or rather, not even force it. Mac Jones just fucking drops the ball on the ground. Harrison Phillips, picks it up for a pretty easy recovery. Uncontested. Oh, man. Mac Jones got the one rushing touchdown in the first quarter, and he thought that he was going to be on timing. Nope. Because both of his interceptions came in the fourth quarter when it mattered the most. They were down 12-7 for most of the way, and both of them came shortly thereafter. Byron Murphy Jr. would get him on the first one, and then in a heave all the way to Minnesota's end zone without a single receiver in the area, Cameron Bynum would pick up the second one. And that would lead to a drive that helped them finish off the game, the Vikings, but not before a stupid Trayvon Walker penalty for unnecessary roughness helped them convert a 3rd and 7 that would have failed and been a 4th and 1. Instead, they pick up 15 free yards, and they are able to take multiple knees before closing out the game from there with the same 12-7 score. Now, the Vikings shouldn't be too proud of this one. I mean, Sam Darnold literally threw an interception in the first quarter to Fuesada Luca, and then opened up the second quarter with an interception to corner for Jacksonville once more. Then opened up the third quarter with another interception. This time, Darnell Savage. Shout out Darnell Savage. But that is not good. That's not a quality ball game, man. Like, no. So, I don't know who was... Again, people were thinking that he had a case for MVP. That's probably tanked deeply after a performance like this. Still managed to complete 63.2% of his passes, though. I guess that's reasonable. They still managed to impose their will in the run game. 43 rushes for under 69 yards. Certainly enough to do just enough to that Jaguars defense to tire them out bit by bit. They still, on their end, did not break, even remotely. But when you have that going down, how have you not seen enough to fire both Doug Peterson and Press Taylor on the fucking spot with production like that on the Jaguars offense? How? How is that? A person by the name of John Parker Romo, who the Vikings picked up over the course of the last week because Will Reichert would be put on IR with an injury of his own, he made all 4 of his field goals in this one and managed to outscore you by himself. But that isn't a fireable offense.
I haven't seen anything over the past few days about these people being gone. How? How is that? That makes no sense. Please, I want to understand. There is no shot. Like, how much faith do you truly have in these guys? Should you really have any faith in these people? I don't know. Falcons Saints. The Saints managed to win this one late with the likes of Darren Rizzi coaching them in his very first game as the interim. It would be aided by Younghoe Koo missing a field goal, getting a field goal blocked, and missing another field goal in the fourth quarter. Now the Falcons would still be in it after despite a Kirk Cousins interception by Tyrann Mathieu. They would have another chance after a punt. And it would come down to them turning the ball over on downs because they wasted all of their timeouts and then just could not get out of bounds for whatever reason. Then they tried to get something to Ray McLeod, and it wouldn't have even picked up the necessary yardage on that fourth down attempt anyways. But after that, the game would simply end. The Saints are still not anything to, rave about. They're not. I mean, yes, 2 touchdowns, 269 yards, and 64% completion by Derek Carr is fine. 3 receptions for 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns by Marquez Valdes-Scantling is not consistent. It's not. I hate to break it to you. He is going to very much fall back down to the face of the earth by the very next game. I anticipate that heavily. There's no shot he's doing that shit again. Okay? And again, you mean to tell me that Younghoe Koo's doing all that and you enter the second half, the 17-7 lead, you don't do anything after that touchdown drive to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, this time getting a 2-yard touchdown catch, right? The end of half doesn't necessarily count because you're just doing whatever with that, but a punt and then a field goal. Punt. What the fuck is that? That's inept as shit. Still, again, with Kirk Cousins doing his Kirk Cousins stuff. And again, I'm shocked about that because, I mean, it's the 1 p.m. slate. This ain't even prime time yet. Like, he managed to do that there. Still, again, with Bijan Robinson putting up 20 rushes for 116 and 2 touchdowns and 3 receptions for 28 yards, he kept them honest, tried to. So, that's a very reasonable contribution. They needed every bit of it, and it still wasn't enough. Drake London would finish with 8 receptions for 97 yards, and Darnell Mooney would also pick up 5 for 96 in this one. The Bills-Colts next. Bills won it 30-20, but when you really think about it, it wasn't that close. I mean, Joe Flacco started off the game as sloppily as you could, to be honest. 23-yard pick 6 thrown to Taron Johnson on their very first possession before another interception to, like, that is crazy. That's crazy, man. That's just not good. Another interception thrown. Back-to-back possessions. And they would open up to a 10-0 ball game. Now, it would get a little competitive. I mean, they would trade some field goals, and the Colts defense would actually force them to turn the ball over on downs before they led a touchdown drive with Goodson, I believe, Tyler Goodson, catching a touchdown pass from Joe Flacco from 2 yards out, tying it up at 10-all. They would force Josh Allen into an interception. EJ Speed would catch this one, and you'd think that they would be able to take some momentum away with that. They only get a field goal, and then the Bills respond immediately with a touchdown drive of their own with another Josh Allen touchdown run. That's typical. Then the Colts would punt, and the Bills would score a field goal to open it up 20-13. Punts ensued before a fumble and then an interception. A fumble by Joe Flacco, recovered by Greg Rousseau. Then on the very first play of the Bills' possession, another Josh Allen pick to none other than Kenny Moore II. The Colts trying their hardest on 4th and 2 to establish some form of resistance to the Bills' pursuit. Victory. Do not convert it. Joe Flacco would be sacked for 10 yards. Another field goal and then another pick in the fourth quarter, this time by Taylor Rapp, would lead to a Bills touchdown drive, with James Cook closing it out and sealing the game. Now, Alec Pierce would get a beautiful touchdown catch. I don't want to discredit it. It was a very good one on the Colts drive that followed, but by that point, it was over. It was over. Even with Josh Allen throwing for just 59.5% completion and 2 interceptions, only a few more passing yards than Daniel Jones, by the way, he still managed to win. Just off the backs of the defense in the rushing attack alone. I mean, 135 rushing yards, 31 rushes, 2 touchdowns. Like, there's something to be said about Josh Allen not having to be Superman for the Bills to win games. But again, he's trying to activate that Jekyll and Hyde shit again. He's trying to do it. They are going to find themselves on the losing end of many games down this stretch if he tries to pull that shit off. Okay, Matt Collins would have 4 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown, and that led the way for them. Meanwhile, for the Colts, credit to Jonathan Taylor. He tried his hardest. 21 rushes for 114 yards by his damn self. But a 2-to-3 touchdown to interception ratio for any quarterback normally wouldn't do it. Though again, with Jared Goff having 2-to-5, you saw him do what against who? So, right? Didn't pan out for Joe Flacco here at all. Even with Alec Pierce leading the way. 3 different receivers had over 70 receiving yards. Adonai Mitchell had 71. Josh Downs had 72. Alec Pierce had 81. A very good way to spread the ball around, but you have to do it effectively or you will not last, for the most part. And again, they would make a decision on this. They've recently made a decision on this, actually, as I am recording this very video. Move on to the Titans and Chargers, and yeah, the Titans, again, just get a touchdown starting out the game, but largely do not a damn thing from that point on. Calvin Ridley continues to have the best of games, but whether it's Will Levis or even Nick Folk being an old and inept kicker, hold him back consistently. And Justin Herbert would manage to get a rushing touchdown to open the game up 13-7 at the half. Not before a couple of punts, though. Titans would respond with a field goal, and the Chargers would then go on 2 consecutive touchdown drives, with one to Quentin Johnson from Justin Herbert, and the other by Hassan Haskins. Ironically enough, I didn't even know he played with this team. But who had him last season? The Titans did. There's a reason why he didn't want to stay there anymore. Calvin Ridley would get another one. Well, at that point, it was already a 27-10 ball game. And only make it 27-17, it was already done. It's not necessarily the worst game by Will Levis. He could do much worse. He has done much worse. All right, 175 yards, 78.3% completion, 2 touchdowns, in a pretty good rushing attack overall, under 32 yards on 21 carries, with Calvin Ridley getting 5 receptions for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns as well. Still, it's not invoking enough fear in the competition. And you aren't doing enough in terms of getting the ball down the field effectively enough and getting points out of them. You're consistently settling for punts, or in most other cases, you're just turning the ball over. That's never a winning recipe. Now, Justin Herbert would only finish with 164 rushing yards and a touchdown of his own. But 145 rushing yards on the ground would keep them honest. The only truly, I guess I can't say prolific. I mean, it was only 2 catches, right? But Matt McConkey would lead the receivers on the Chargers end with 52 receiving yards. And then we finally move on to Jets-Cardinals. Yeah. The Jets are just trash. Can we just say it? The Jets are just, oh man. They're done. Their season is quite literally over. There's no other way around it. 3-7. At least the Dolphins managed to win their game. And I don't even know how much of a chance they have. But the Jets may certainly just be out of it. This was a porous game for Aaron Rodgers. 151 yards. And 62.9% completion percentage from the field. 4.3 yards per pass attempt. That ain't the Aaron Rodgers we know, man. That is just a rough performance all around. So no one truly dominated this ball game for them. Easily said. They had a different kicker at least, Spencer Schrader, but that even didn't do enough for them. The Cardinals were just on one the entire game. James Conner opened it up with a touchdown run. Kyler Murray got a touchdown run. Marvin Harrison Jr. would catch a beautiful fade route in the end zone in the second quarter before they would close out the half with a field goal to open the game up 24-6 with Chad fucking Ryland. Alright, third quarter, another touchdown by Kyler Murray on the ground. And at that point, I guess they just decided to take it easy. They still had the starters in, but it really didn't matter at that point. Jets would subsequently turn it over on downs, and that was the story of their whole game. Let's rack this up, shall we? Let's do this. 9 yards, 6 play punt. That's 1. A fumble by Aaron Rodgers of all people. You got 1 punt. You got 1 turnover. 2 punts, 1 turnover. A field goal. Boom. 5 possession. 5 possessions in one game. 5 and you 5 possessions ending in 6 points. Very unsatisfactory work. This is not the NBA where having more than 1.0 points or so per possession is considered to be an elite offense. You're playing in a completely different space with completely different logistics. There's no shot they pulled that off. And they subsequently got their asses kicked. But Robert Saleh was the fucking problem. No, it's Nathaniel Hackett. Still, and he needs to be gone. Why is that not being recognized? I don't understand it. Now, just a few headlines here. Yes, the Seahawks are on their bye week, but Tyrel Dodson would be waived, I would assume, for costs, because it was also stated that a Bears player, lineman Nate Davis, would also be waived by the Bears for cost purposes. I guess that's just the time of year for this, where most teams are going to be trying to, have to, do these maneuvers to save as much money as they possibly can in this time. And go out and get other talent down the line. So I suppose. It would be detailed that on Monday, Shane Waldron, the former Seahawks offensive coordinator and Bears offensive coordinator for this season, would be fired. And granted, again, if having consecutive ball games without a single touchdown scored were not enough evidence to have him out of there, then I don't really know what to say. But it goes a lot deeper than that when you really think about it. The numbers do not lie. Their offense was atrocious. Their 19.4 points per game were 24th. And when it comes to overall rankings in the passing game, in the rushing game, they were pretty much bottom 9 teams in both of those categories. Yes, I understand that Caleb Williams is a rookie and there's going to be some growing pains there, but that's still just a horrible, horrible reflection on what the hell was being called on that field week in, week out. And they have promoted Thomas Brown an in-house hire and adjustment. So maybe that could help them out just a little bit. You need some kind of spark at this point. Because even with all that being said, you still are 4-5. You still are in position to potentially secure a playoff bid, barring any craziness in the AFC North. You have a chance. It's not done. Right? You just gotta tighten up sooner rather than later. Something's gotta give, man. Dak Prescott would be officially listed as out for the rest of the season after receiving the medical opinion that he needed. And Jerry Jones would report the news. He thought himself a few weeks back that he was actually going to get him back, and that would not happen. The clown show in Dallas, they are clowns, they are jesters, but deep down, they're sad, they're crying, and there's even more despair coming with that news. But it was y'all season. Okay. Deommodore Lenoir, the corner for the San Francisco 49ers, would sign a 5-year, $92 million contract extension. I see it as a good move. I don't really have a problem with it. You want to keep that core of Travarius Ward and him there for a while because he has been a pretty decent corner for the last few years now. And it's certainly done well for the 49ers. They've been Super Bowl contenders for how long? So you're trying your best to extend your window. Yes, the way the season has started, it doesn't look like that can happen, but who knows? It would also be detailed that recently, Anthony Richardson would be named the starter for the rest of the season after Joe Flacco's 2 underwhelming starts against the Vikings and now the Bills this latest week. It's going to be a struggle regardless, but you have a little more upside with Anthony Richardson, and you want to just test it out at this point. You don't want to let the experiment stop, because yes, as a young quarterback, your confidence can certainly be shot if you are consistently in a revolving door, in and out of the starting position. That doesn't do much for your development either. it is best that you continue to get as many reps as you need. Because at some point for Anthony Richardson, despite him being the most inaccurate quarterback in this season, and again, historically, this specific season could stand out as one of the most inaccurate seasons by a quarterback, period. You want to ensure him that ability. And you want to keep the faith that at some point it could potentially come together for Anthony Richardson. You just have to let it play out. You can't give pause to it, because it's not going to help him in any capacity. Well, that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I don't even know how I managed to make it this long without the Seahawks even playing this week. But it is what it is. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.